On today's episode, I'm going to talk about a topic that's not always the most fun for me to talk about on the show, and that's one Patrick Williams. Not because of Patrick Williams and the lack of play or the lack of progression as a player being drafted fourth overall, and not even because of the contract that's become an overblown contract, not any of that, but because the conversation around Patrick Williams is a stark reminder of the continued failure of Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley. On today's episode, though, we're going to talk about why Patrick Williams is going to have a very hard time cracking the rotation, but we already have an answer to the Patrick Williams problem on the roster, and that's Leonard Miller. And we're going to talk a little bit about why Leonard Miller is set to succeed where Patrick Williams failed at. We're going to talk a little bit about that, plus why Tre Jones is becoming one of the most important bench players for the Chicago Bulls this season. We're talking about all that plus more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Tre Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content today, y'all. And Patrick Williams, man, the Patrick Williams problem, so to say. And I want to start off talking about this. You know, there's still a stark difference in the way that Patrick Williams communicates, or the way that things are communicated about Patrick Williams amongst the fan base versus what we see on the basketball court. There's a number of people, like, I can't stress to you enough. I can't remember, and I'm not saying this because I don't agree with him. I really can't remember his name. But it's a certain user that's like, oh, Patrick Williams can play the two guard. What? And then even when I asked him, I was like, well, what two guard compares to Patrick Williams? Like Norman Powell. I'm like, what? But nonetheless, right? Like, even outside of that, like, there is still part of this fan base, whether how big or how small, that still believes in Patrick Williams. And then there's a part of the fan base that has a mindset of, oh, well, we got to get Patrick Williams off this team. And I'm going to tell you right now, both thinking is flawed, right? Not because, and we're going to talk about what Patrick Williams can do to maybe get in the rotation or some things in this episode, but it's not just because of, Patrick Williams that he doesn't have talent. We all know that Patrick Williams has talent. That has never been the problem. It's the fact that he doesn't care, right? But on top of that, people that are like, well, nothing matters until you trade. You have to find a way to get off that contract. Also are lost in reality in the sense that there's nobody taking back Patrick Williams' contract right now unless you want to give up a first-round pick. And if you look at me in my face and tell me it's worth to get off a first-round pick just because you don't want Patrick Williams on this roster, you are also just as lost as the same people that you say have too much faith in Patrick Williams. The fact of the matter is Patrick Williams is on this roster, and he's probably going to be on this roster for another 2 or 3 years. That's the reality of it. Maybe when he's expiring, you can move off of him, and people are like, well, we got to get his value up. Patrick Williams' value is so ass and in the trash right now that Patrick Williams could come out and average 18 and 8, and people would still be like, we probably need to see him do it another season before we believe in it because it is Patrick Williams. And that's where the conversation goes, where every time it's about Patrick Williams, right? You have your fans that still but still see the potential in Patrick Williams, which I do understand to a degree. And then there's your fan base that is so over Patrick Williams that they are willing to do anything that even hurts this team in the long run just because they don't want to see his face on the roster. The place that I sit on it is Patrick Williams is going to have a hard time to crack the rotation, and that's what we're going to talk about here in this one, right? Patrick Williams, in a lot of ways, has more to prove than anybody else on this roster. If he wants to get into the rotation, he has almost more to prove than anybody else. He has failed to show any consistent growth year after year, and while people are going to blame, well, his role change, he should have never been a 4, there's not really much difference between playing the 3 and the 4. I'm sorry. And when Patrick Williams coming off the bench, playing the 3, playing the 4, the production was all the same. And I feel like people have held on so much to the flashes that he showed as a rookie, which he did. And I will say this, the one thing that I think about P. Will is that he bulked up too fast. I always make the comparison to Dragon Ball Z when I think, was it Gohan? Bulked up too fast when it becoming Super Saiyan. Was it 2? I can't remember. Like, I'm old now. It's been a while. And he bulked up and became way too big, and then you started slowing down, right? Like, and that's a part of it, right? But I do think that Patrick Williams too often has been a player that's forgettable when he's on the basketball court. And I think when you look at it as well, you have to keep in mind this new front office owes Patrick Williams nothing. There's nothing owed to Patrick Williams. Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley are gone. They're the ones that drafted him. They're the ones that were tied to him, so much so that we've heard things since they left about how tied they were to him. It makes it even more depressing, to be 100% honest with you. But that's gone. So that even that barrier, that safety net that he had in Arturas, because Arturas just didn't want to be wrong about P. Will, that's gone. The doubling down on the $90 million contract, it's there, it's signed, it is what it is. Well, now that you have a new front office in Bryson Graham that didn't draft him, you have a new coach in Tiago Splitter that's new to this team, and that hopefully, right, my hope is that you're not coming into this and that Tiago took this job because you're not about to force him to play anybody. He's there to evaluate, he's there to develop, let him do his job. And I say this too, if Patrick Williams comes into training camp and plays great and earns a role, nobody should be mad at that, right? I'll say that. That is the great divider. If P. Will comes in and he performs in a way that this new coaching staff looks at and say, well, damn, we got to play him, then cool. And if he lives up to that performance day in and day out on the court, nobody should be mad at that. Nobody, if P. Will is playing well, nobody should be, but why are we playing him? He's AK's guy. If he's playing well, he's playing well. But at the same time, is there any faith in P. Will playing well? I don't think so. Right now, Patrick Williams is the fourth highest paid player on the cap sheet, but that doesn't dictate the rotation. And the part of this new era doesn't need to be dictated by contracts, by draft position, or anything like that. Let the players go out there and earn it. Now, we're going to talk about the ways and the reasons that Patrick Williams could still earn a role, because while I don't believe that he's going to hit these benchmarks, we're not going to act like there's not things that he could do potentially to earn that role on this team. The hill to climb could be absolutely astronomical for him to get that, but it is going to be things that he can do, right? I think that when you first have to look at this, the rotation has completely changed. Caleb Wilson and Matas Buzelis are now the priority in development at that forward position. And some Bulls fans will even say, ask the question, is Matas? Because again, an AK guy, which I think Matas has shown himself, and even the way that Bryson Graham and Tiago Splitter have talked about him, they're going to be developing Matas Buzelis. But those are the guys first. Then you have Jalen Smith, who is going to play some power forward. He's going to play some center. But he is ahead of the rotation than Patrick Williams. And then we have Leonard Miller, who we're going to get into detail about how Leonard Miller can be the right where Patrick Williams went wrong at. But you have that. And then that's not even to say if Dailyn Swain, Noah Essengay, or anybody else does show up a potential in a role as well. So we'll see, right? Like, those are the longer shots in it. But it's already going to be hard for Patrick Williams to crack the rotation in any type of meaningful way just because of the number of bodies that are ahead of him. The Bulls have switched guard depth to forward depth. And at the end of the day, could leave P. Will out of that rotation. Now, how can P. Will still earn a role on this team? One, he does have NBA experience. So that should put him above Dailyn Swain and above Noah Essengay if he can just play decently well and play competently, right? So that's where he can do it as well. That NBA experience, the fact that he has been a player that's averaged double figures, shot over almost 40% from three-point at some point. His size could allow him to guard multiple positions. We've seen how Tiago Splitter can use multi-positional defenders. And so that's really where Patrick Williams would have to hang his hat on, being that defender that can also hit some threes and do that one. And I think that this new coaching staff as well could simplify the responsibilities because they are not tied to who Patrick Williams could have been when he's drafted. They're tied to the reality of anything of who Patrick Williams is at that point. They could, right? And the lack of shooting that Isaac Okoro does have, even with Isaac Okoro being a solid defender, is that Patrick Williams brings more shooting upside than that. Now, we'll see. A big part of this comes down to is the end of the season flashes that we saw from Leonard Miller legit? Jalen Smith is Jalen Smith. He's going to be there. But I think for the Jalen part of it, how many minutes does he have to play at center because of how healthy Zach Collins is or not? Is Dailyn Swain, does he spend time in the G League? Does he not? Those type of things are going to be there. Patrick Williams doesn't need to be a star anymore. He doesn't even need to live up to being the fourth overall pick. He has a chance at a reset because of how of how this franchise has changed, of just coming out there and being a defender that can hit some open threes. But he has to take those threes to do it. But the reasons why Patrick Williams could be squeezed out of the rotation are vast. Like I talked about, Matas and Caleb are now the clear developmental priorities here for the Chicago Bulls at the forward position. Leonard Miller can join them there. You then have your three-headed monster of players in Leonard Miller, Patrick Williams, Leonard Miller, Caleb Wilson, and Matas Buzelis that all can play both forward positions. Leonard Miller's probably more of a 4/undersized 5 that can still play a little bit 3, but you have that there. And don't let Dailyn Swain or Noah Essengay start showing some stuff for you too. Then they can take some of those minutes at the 3 and just choke them out even more, right? Isaac Okoro, I think, brings more consistent defense than Patrick Williams ever did. It's been flashes of defense with Patrick Williams, and I think Okoro is a little bit more consistent in that. And then, like I said, Jalen Smith's shooting, rim protection, and rebounding are far and beyond anything that Patrick Williams has offered or consistently in regards to that one. Patrick Williams is no longer in a place where his draft position matters at all. And so the Patrick Williams problem isn't really a problem as much as it is an inconvenience. And that inconvenience can easily be told, go sit on the end of that bench and we'll holler at you when we need you. And we'll see where that goes. But I want to segue that into something more positive. Why Leonard Miller can be the right where Patrick Williams potentially went wrong at. Leonard Miller has earned an opportunity on this team. When you look at the way that he finished, let's not even say the way that he finished. Let's talk about the way that he played overall for this team last season. He played in 27 games and he made 12 starts. In those games that he played, he averaged basically 12 points, 11.7 points, 5.8 rebounds. He did that after the Ayo Dosunmu trade, right? But then when you look at the more important numbers, in the last month of the season, in April, he averaged 16.2 points per game, 8.2 rebounds. That was coming in. Then he had a 26-point performance with 11 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, and 1 block against the Washington Wizards, and 15 points and 17 points and 7 rebounds against Dallas. 15 points against Orlando, 17 points and 7 rebounds against Dallas. The fact is that at a time period last season where Patrick Williams had yet another opportunity with everybody injured, dead, or whatever else, right? Patrick Williams had another opportunity to flash some things, did not. You know who did? Leonard Miller. Now, I do think that there are some overranking of Leonard Miller. I remember a conversation that I had with somebody over the summer, and they were like, well, Leonard Miller's clearly a 1A in the priority list. I'm like, Leonard Miller's not a 1A in the priority list. Like, make no mistake about it. He has earned a spot to definitely say, hey, develop me, right? He's definitely earned that. But a 1A, he's definitely not that. Like, that's doing too much. But Leonard Miller has shown, invest in me, right? Invest in me. At 6'10", 220 pounds, right? And somebody that has come in and, like I said, has more size than Patrick Williams, is a better rebounder than Patrick Williams, is more consistent in being aggressive than Patrick Williams, and shown that already in short flashes. It's tough to overlook that and try to develop that when you're on, quote unquote, the ground floor for that. The production as well that he had when he was on the court with Matas and Josh Giddey, it's very promising. The things that Leonard Miller, regardless of the numbers, let's take the numbers away, right? Because those were March and April numbers. We know that those can be a little bit fluky, especially, for the Bulls and a rebuilding team where he was playing a lot of minutes that he's probably not going to play and playing a role that he's not probably going to play. What did Leonard Miller show that was translatable in that stretch? He ran the floor. He finished efficiently around the basket because he was aggressive around the basket and didn't become passive. He rebounded inside, and his rebounding percentage was really good. He produced without needing plays called for him, which is something that you always want on a team for a player that may not be a developmental priority for you. If you can develop without us needing to call plays for you, it works. And he showed more confidence as the season went on, as his role was more defined and his minutes increased, right? That's something that really kind of overshadowed Patrick Williams, even in what we've been looking for. So why could he be in the rotation? One, I think that he could thrive under Tiago Splitter because the faster offense is going to be something that Leonard Miller can absolutely thrive in. The best offensive responsibilities for Leonard Miller comes down to running the floor, cutting behind the defenders, which he does pretty consistently, which I actually want to see Matas do a little bit more of, his cutting, those backdoor cuts. Leonard Miller understands how to get that. The way that Leonard Miller also set screens, and for this offense, imagine Leonard Miller coming in off the bench, setting a screen for Norman Powell, and then Norman Powell coming off catch and shooting. Like, you can do that. Setting hard screens is a talent, and a talent I think a lot of people can overlook sometimes of how important that becomes in your offense, especially when you don't have players that can create their own shots. You can run a Leonard Miller making a screen for Caleb Wilson, who then can cut to the basket and catch a pass from Josh Giddey or Tre Jones, right? The way that he also defended from the weak side, that is going to be something really important for the positions that Leonard Miller is set to play, the 3, the 4, or the small ball 5. Being able to provide consistent weak side defense is there. And I'll say this, the way that Leonard Miller attacked closeouts against opposing bench players with using 1 or 2 dribbles, it's definitely something that I think could be replicated because of the role that he's going to be playing coming off the bench. Thiago doesn't need to turn Leonard Miller into anything else. What Thiago Splitter needs to do is to maximize the things that Leonard Miller does well and put him in a situation and position to where he can maximize on that. The rebounding that Leonard Miller brings as well. This is another thing that when you look at Thiago Splitter between what he coached in like Paris and EuroLeague, what he did with the Portland Trailblazers, get guys that can get offensive rebounds, and he's always put an emphasis on offensive rebounds. Leonard Miller provides that in a large way for that Chicago Bulls team. I love the way that Leonard Miller crashes the offensive glass and how aggressively he goes after the offensive glass as well. So that could be another place where you can find a role for him. The rebounding part of it could be big for the Chicago Bulls and big for Leonard Miller to continue to earn that role under Thiago Splitter because Thiago loves that. And then the positional versatility that Leonard Miller has. The fact that he's 6'10", 220 pounds. He moves like a forward, right? And you put the ball on the floor some. His ability to play backup power forward, some 3, some small ball 5, those things are going to put him in situations to where you can, what have I said before? Thiago's toolbox. How Thiago can go into the toolbox, pull whatever he needs for that specific matchup. And so if you do run a situation where Zach Collins is injured, Jalen Smith was running some minutes, and Leonard Miller at the small ball center can rebound both offensively and defensively, get you out in transition, and then you're playing quicker. Imagine a lineup. Like, I'm not saying the starting lineup or anything, but you having Josh Giddey, Norman Powell, Matas Buzelis, Caleb Wilson with Leonard Miller playing the small ball 5. Those are all players that can switch, right? Buzelis, Wilson, and Miller can all switch. They can all rebound. They can start the fast break. They can finish the fast break. They can cut. That's something that you really look for. Or he can provide that energy next to Nick Claxton or Zach Collins or Jalen Smith. The versatility is out the wazoo in regards to that one. And I think that because Thiago Splitter, like I said with Patrick Williams, he likes having defined roles for young players. It doesn't mean that he's not going to push them to do some things that may be outside the comfort zone. He will do that, but he's also going to have defined roles as far as this is what I expect from you. Go out and make this happen. If you do that, there's going to be a role here for you. That's going to be a big part of it. Now, there are some real obstacles here for it. Now, everything isn't sunshine and rainbows for Leonard Miller. 32.3% from 3 last season. It's not terrible, but at the same time, it's something that this team is going to want to prioritize a little bit more spacing than that. Now, for the Chicago Bulls, he shot 32% from 3 between the Timberwolves and the Bulls. But for the Bulls last season, where he took 3.2 three-pointers per game, the most that he ever had in his career, he did it at a 35% clip. So even with the three-point shooting being a little bit of a concern, he's shown that some semblance of, hey, it's there. Like, I can be a solid three-point shooter. So we'll see what happens. He doesn't have to be some crazy 40% shooter. If he can maintain, I think, anywhere between like 33-ish on low volume up to 35, 36-ish on high volume, if he can do that for the Bulls, I think that it opens up the floor for him. And I love how disciplined he is on the defensive side of the ball. He has the tools to switch. He recovers, he rebounds, and he does all that without fouling for real. When you look at him, he's averaged less than a foul per game for his career. And even when his minutes went up for the Chicago Bulls last year, where his personal fouls did go up to 2, it is something you're still looking at and saying, I think you can work with that. It was his first time playing heavy minutes. Big men, they take a while to learn how to defend without fouling. I think he can do that. So I think overall, like, that between that and the overloaded front court, that may be the biggest things that hold Leonard Miller back. But I think Miller has a really good opportunity, again, to be the right where Patrick Williams kind of went wrong at in some ways, at least in my personal opinion. I'd love to hear from you guys on this one down below. What do you think about that as far as the Patrick Williams part, the Leonard Miller piece? I'm just a lot more excited about Leonard Miller as a prospect right now than what I am Patrick Williams. But again, like I said, I try to shoot it fair. I'm not going to act like it's completely out of the realm of possibility for Patrick Williams to get in the rotation. I just think at this point, it's highly unlikely, if that makes sense. But I want to end this show talking about a player that I do think could become one of the most important bench players for the Chicago Bulls next season, and that's Tre Jones. I've talked a lot about Josh Giddey and how Giddey's ability to create is going to help this team a lot because we don't have a lot of players that create their own shot. I think now when you look at it, that Tre Jones also becomes a player that is hugely important for the development of Matas Buzelis, Caleb Wilson, possibly Noah Estegay, Dailyn Swain. He becomes really a big part in that, right? You want to leave a creator on the court with Caleb Wilson at all times. The Bulls are shaped up to be able to do that. Having Josh Giddey and Tre Jones, there's going to be able to do that. And I think when you look at that as well for Matas Buzelis, always having one of these guys on the court are going to be there. Jones is in a perfect position to help the Bulls maximize their young talent, right? We know that Josh Giddey is the offensive engine that's expected to be there, what he's there for. But then you come in and you have another floor general in Tre Jones that's going to help the Wilsons, going to help the Dailyn Swains, all those type of guys get easy buckets. On top of that, he's going to know how to run Tiago Splitter's offense. When you think about Tiago Splitter's offense, the structured freedom, the pace that they play with, these are all things that help Tre Jones. Since Tre Jones came to Chicago, which he's played 83 games in Chicago, 60 of those he started, he's averaged 13.5 points per game, 3.2 rebounds, being often the smallest guy on the court, 5.3 assists, 1.1 steals, and he shot the ball 55% from the field. His assist to turnover ratio is nearly 4-1. He's had the 20th best assist to turnover ratio in the league since coming over to the Chicago Bulls. He also led the Chicago Bulls in win shares at 5.7 last year. The only other player that was close to him was Nikola Vucevic at 3.5. Tre Jones is underappreciated because his role isn't always about being the flashiest. But I think the unselfishness that Tre Jones plays with, the floor general ability that he does have, all those type of things, while not even being an elite shooter, he has enough of a shooting threat to keep defenses honest. You look at Tre Jones, and I'm telling you right now, if this bench ends up being better than expected, a big part of that is going to be Tre Jones and his ability to organize. Even looking at a Zach Collins or a Jalen Smith and Tre Jones pick and roll, pick and pop scenario in that case can be very huge for this team. Tre Jones is somebody that I'm telling you right now, Giddey may be the orchestrator, but Jones, the efficiency that he plays with, the passing prowess that he plays with, and the dog mentality that he plays with defensively could end up being what helps bring some identity to the Chicago Bulls team. Now, the question a lot of people ask is that, does that mean that the Bulls are going to be able to keep him long term, or much like we talked about with Jalen Smith yesterday, are teams going to come calling for an offer that the Bulls may not be able to turn down? We'll see. But to me, unless Rob Dillingham all of a sudden becomes exactly what his potential said that he could be, Tre Jones is somebody that he's a replaceable player, but somebody that you may not want to replace because what he brings here is just so good and consistent that you want to rely on that. But we'll see. Let me know what you guys think on all that down below, man. That's going to do it for today's episode. I want to hear how you guys feel about Patrick Williams. Are you a guy that still believes in P. Will? Are you over P. Will? What do you feel about that? How do you feel about Leonard Miller and where he can be next season for the Chicago Bulls? And do you agree with me that Tre Jones could become one of the most important role players on this Bulls team? We'll see. Outside of that, make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode or an upload. You can follow us at Bull Central Pod on every social media platform. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. But that's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.